times, bad friends.
All right. Today on Good Times, Bad Friends, we're joined by someone who has helped design the way millions of people experience wonder. From Idaho to being homeless in LA to building the largest Disney castle in the world to designing theme parks across 9 countries, Josh Steadman's story isn't just about creativity, it's about resilience. He's a former Disney Imagineer, now the Director of Experience Design at Space Center Houston, and his journey includes sobriety, second chances, and learning that positivity isn't always fluff, it's survival. This conversation is about what it takes to build magic in parks and your own life. So if you're new here, follow, like, subscribe so you don't miss cool stories like Josh's.
Yeah, Josh, thanks a lot for coming on. Like, there's just so many different ways we can go, and I get so nervous when you like read a really, really good intro because I'm like, man, my life is terrible. Like, I'm so boring. And like, what have I
That was
done?
great.
Like, I literally don't do anything compared to
You guys
the
wrote
guests
that
we have
really
on.
well, by the way.
Yeah.
That,
Man, we just took the
Colin's
answers right off
top-notch.
everything. Yeah, he's a
little
little
chat.
bit of a he's a little bit of a
Yeah.
poet, some would say.
Some would say Chat GPT inside of me is very creative.
Inside
I'm going
of
to
me.
steal that quote. I'm going to steal that quote.
My heart is made of AI. But anyway, yeah, man, thanks. You know, we're gonna dive into everything, but you know, just to get you comfortable being here, like we truly do appreciate it. I know that we literally haven't met, and I think that's a lot of fun because everything we knew or everything that we learned is going to be completely new. So feel free to just kind of open up, tell us where you started, what you learned, and kind of how you got to where you are now. Start from as far back as you want to, and just kind of tell us about your life and what shaped you, and we'll kind of pick it apart piece by piece.
Oh, wow. There's so much. That is such a giant question. But where
That's
do you
why
even
we do it.
I always tell people in it, I think the best beginnings of my story is that in the country, Idaho was born in Spokane. My dad moved us around a lot. So I think part of my life story is I'm used to always being the new person. And I'm used to very, how do I say it? Not so normal pathways. I think there's a lot of people who have comfort, a lot of ease of access that has never been my reality. And in fact, it still isn't my reality. So hopefully there are people that listen to stories like mine and they're like, wow, I can relate because life is not always peaches and cream and it's not always sunshine, lollipops and rainbows. And that's certainly not been the case for me. So, yeah, you know, I am the oldest boy of 6 kids. I have an older sister, but I have 3 younger brothers and big Mormon family. Grew up in southern Idaho, a little place called Jerome, Idaho, actually, right next to Twin Falls. There's a lot of movie trivia I have in my life because I love movies. So true trivia, just for anyone who knows, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the scene where they fall off the raft and the raft goes down into the snow, goes down off the mountainside, down off the canyon. That was shot a mile from my house. So they did pick up
No way.
of the raft falling down into the Snake River Gorge. That was literally where I grew up. And in fact, I remember seeing the camera crews, Spielberg's camera crews, second, third units going up there to film that scene when I was a kid. But my parents took me to Disneyland when I was a little kid, and when Disneyland was affordable and meaning it was like 16, $20, something like that a person. And now it's the cost of a mortgage to get in and
Mhm.
they've outpriced most of their audiences, right? Basically, to even go into those places. So, but I remember very distinctly like seeing things as a 6-year-old kid in a stroller and having this weird sense that there were designers or artists that fabricated and crafted a world. And that was fascinating to me. I think a lot of the reason why I became who I am now is reality was always really hard. So for me, coming up with this alternate virtual reality that was tangible was something that I followed after and I sought after. It gave me a source of non-reality, something else to live in because real world was really difficult.
Hmm.
So I think mostly because I was an odd kid. You call me ADHD, people would say that I'm probably a little bit spectrum somewhere along that giant rainbow spectrum of Asperger's and all the things. I think most artists are. I don't think that's an unusual thing. But yeah, I was a weird kid, and I think drawing became an outlet. So ended up sketching and drawing quite a bit. But it's funny now, I hate drawing. Now I'm so over it, and I've been doing it for 27 years this year professionally, making money because of creating doodles, drawings, rendering, stuff like that, that I'm just like, I'm ready to like close that big chapter of my life and do something different. And I think I'm finding myself at a weird crossroads right now where that's a big theme. We can get to that later, but drawing as a kid was kind of therapeutic. So I would sit there and just draw monsters and robots and dragons for hours. And in the 80s, drawing wasn't something they ever pursued, or at least in elementary school, in a Victorian school system that I grew up in the early 80s. I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm 80, 81, 77. I was born in 77. So, um,
She yeah, we're kind of
Odds
yes,
over.
yes, a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
So,
all right,
well,
jerks.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, like, art wasn't something they endorsed. It was always about math, science, and reading.
Mhm.
And especially in Idaho, where people were potato farmers and people were really poor, where I grew up, art wasn't ever something. It was always football. Every recess was football,
Yep.
right?
That was us in Texas too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's just kind of the climate, and it's what people are used to, and it's is what it is. It's what's endorsed. And then, or basketball, and I was terrible. I was terrible at sports. So I didn't get good at sports until I started college. And I think most of that was just maturity, like being physically bigger and being able to lift
Mhm.
weights, finding myself, right? Because I was a squirt for so long. Yeah, so drawing became my outlet, and drawing Disneyland because I had been there, from such a young age. And I find it remarkable actually, my parents, that they had the foresight to actually take me and my sisters, there's only three of us at the time, to that park and experience it, in that was a big deal. I found out, my mom told me a story a couple years ago. I went up to visit my parents who live in Idaho still. My mom over breakfast was like, I have a story I've never told you. And I'm like, oh yeah, what's that? She's like, well, it was about how my grandfather and my grandmother packed up their old sedan in Riverton, Utah, and over breakfast, my granddad, who was a mine worker, he worked in the largest open pit copper mine, so very blue collar, read in the paper about this park opening in Anaheim, California called Disneyland, and he said, we've got to go to this. So he literally
Whoa.
packed his wife and his three little girls, drove all the way down to Anaheim from Utah, Salt Lake City area, in 1955, and my mom remembers them camping in orange groves and laying in the back of the sedan, because the back of the car, right, they would lay down, meaning the trunk would lay down and you could lay on it like it was like a bed or something, and they
Wow.
slept in the orange groves. They then they went to Disneyland that morning, so they drove all night, got there, slept in the orange grove, get to the gate of the park, and tickets were $5, right?
No.
I think it was $5, and he didn't have the money to
Oh,
get his
no.
to buy. They were like $5 short.
Ugh.
And so they packed up the car, turned around, never went into the park, and went all the way home. And I hear that story, and I'm like, whoa, the analogy, like, no wonder
Mhm.
why my life's been so screwed up. Like this was cursed all along, like so long. Like it's a giant metaphor for existence, I think, for for at least for me. So when she told me that story, I was like, Mom, how come you've never told me that? That's an epic story. And so entertainment was just a fantasy. Like working in entertainment was a fantasy. That's just not what you did. You got to get a job. You made money, you survived, and you had a family and you had kids and all of that. And then so here I am drawing dragons and shit and going, I'm in theme parks and I'm in Idaho. And my parents are like, what's wrong with this kid? There's something really wrong with this. Because
Well,
I
let me
was
let me ask you. So you said like you wanted to like create this alternate reality and like sports were not your thing in high school. So like having to take your niche from what everyone else was doing to this drawing and art atmosphere and creating this alternate reality. Like what did that teach you like socially about how to interact with your peers?
well, so one thing I said is we moved a lot. By the
Hmm.
time by the time I was graduated from high school in 1995, we had moved 19 times. I was like predominantly Idaho, and there was an area that we lived in for the big bulk of my childhood. And then from junior high to high school, we were moving. My dad and my mom would buy a home, renovate the house, flip the house, make a profit off the house, and then we would do it all over again.
Yeah.
Can't tell you like how many times were ripping out carpet, tile, redoing it ourselves. And it was me and my mom and my brother Lou. We were the ones doing it. My dad was at work. We were the ones fixing up these homes and then selling them and moving again. And so I got used to just being, I kind of have not a lot of social fear and a lot of social anxiety, which is kind of funny because I just don't. I like people. I like talking to people. Um, I think it's my greatest asset and talent is that I am good with people
Yeah.
and I am a good salesperson because I grew up Mormon, peddling religion. Like it's baked in the casserole of who I am, like to just be for and blunt. And that a lot of people don't like that. And there are a lot of people who will like it because it's like, at least with me, I think everyone knows where they stand. There's no
Hmm.
mystery.
You get what
I
you get.
like to keep it that way because I don't like the mysteries, and secrets
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So, anyway, I'm kind of going all over the place, but we moved a lot. And I think in moving, the drawing and this escapism of designing and wanting to be this thing that was so unrealistic and out of touch with reality became my reality. I just talked about it like I had it. Like,
Hmm.
this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to do. And come hell or high water, I'm going to do it. And I did. And that's one portion of, I think, the crazy journey that has been an interesting pathway or an interesting journey, the hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest moment that most of our guests get to, and I love hearing these stories if you have it, but it's kind of that turning point where if you would have followed what everybody else was doing or everybody else was saying that you should do, you wouldn't have the story that you have. Like you wouldn't be able to say that intro and it would sound even close to the same at all. So I think a lot of people benefit from the fact that they can turn away from the status quo or what everybody else is doing. Or it's like, hey, just fit in, just play sports. And you're like, well, I'm not good at it. That's not my passion. So for you, was there like a specific moment where you thought to yourself, like, "Man, not only am I the only person going on this road, but like, am I going to be able to design experiences for a living? Am I going to be able to create something? And obviously, we'll kind of segue into, you turns it into the best job in the world. But was there a moment where you can be like, man, this can take me far. This is what I care about, and then this is what I'm going to chase for the rest of my life.
I mean, gosh, that's a good question. My answer for that question is I wish I had been more open. Now looking backwards, I had other opportunities that popped up that could have been a lot more stable, meaning I ended up working. It's such a crazy story, but I ended up working in the desert as a wilderness survival therapist right after getting a degree in art and design.
Well, okay, don't go
Yeah,
any
yeah.
further.
Hang on, stay there.
I need you to explain that.
So okay, so let me just tell I go to art school in 1996. I went to Ecuador, Guayaquil, Ecuador as a Mormon missionary, and I'm no longer Mormon, just to clarify and declare that. I went to Ecuador as a 19-year-old kid and was one of those guys in a white shirt and tie wandering around. But in Ecuador in 1996, we're talking the most third world conditions. I mean, it was Three Amigos, Santa Poco, but what worse, right? Like And that's a whole nother adventure and stories. I work with this astronaut actually at work. Her name's Megan. She's amazing. And I was telling her stories today at lunch about being on buses and had a lady get stabbed right next to me. And literally
Oh.
she was bleeding out all over me. And I took off my shirt. I in my magic holy underwear top, and I'm wrapping this lady to stop her from bleeding. Like that's a true story. Like these stories are
Whoa.
crazy true.
Wow.
They're weird. And I'm like, I shouldn't have ever been there. Like that wasn't a place now looking back, like I shouldn't have been in Ecuador. And people are like, oh no, like that's your destiny. And I'm like, bullshit. I was supposed to be.
Like I'm watching
And
this girl bleed out. I don't
yeah,
think this is the right thing.
weird stuff like that. Anyway, when I came back from Guayaquil 1998, I got a job with the Walt Disney College program out of college. They came out and recruited, and I ended up working on the Tower of Terror as a bellhop. And then I did crowd control at Fantasmic, and I worked the Milan Parade and actually ended up being a dancer in the Milan Parades. And kind of by accident, and had the greatest summer of my life just meeting people and being a college kid and kind of finding life, and it was so much fun. But I purposely got that gig because I was so crazy about wanting to be a theme park designer. I was like, I gotta work in parks. Like, if you want to know how to speak a language, then you gotta live where that language is spoken. Theme park operations was that language for me, and so I worked ops. And then I had to audition for my role on the Tower of Terror back in those days when Michael Eisner was president of the Disney company, and literally it was a very big deal, like, to audition for the Tower of Terror because it was all performance theming. You had to act like you were stuck in the Twilight Zone and stuff like that. It's like Haunted Mansion cast members performances back in the 80s and 90s were a really big deal. They don't do any of that anymore, right? But um so after that I had been accepted to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena on a advanced place scholarship, but that school is like so inaffordable and unaffordable. And I was waiting tables, so I moved to LA to go to Art Center, staying at a friend's house, and then waiting tables at Johnny Rockets when that was a thing, hoping on a prayer to go to Art Center. Art Center was the only school they were at the time recruiting students to work on the Phantom Menace. And so they had this incredible concept design program, and I knew so I had junior college under my belt, but I really needed someone to push me. I needed to be pushed to become a better artist. Sneaking into classes without paying tuition, and then got caught, and they told me not to do that anymore. And so at the time, I was like, where am I going to go? If I can't go to Art Center, which was my dream, where am I going to go? And so I had applied. My parents were like, you should apply to BYU. Go to BYU. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I'm so over the Mormon culture stuff, which is a whole nother ball of wax. And I ended up going to BYU. I was accepted on an art scholarship, but I made a deal with the chair and the dean to allow me, if I was going to go to BYU and leave Art Center where I was going to study this program, to put together my own program in themed entertainment. And there weren't any programs. So right now you can go to SCAD, Laguna College of Art and Design, which I teach there, Ringling College of Art, and UCF, Florida, and you can take classes and study themed entertainment. And they have different tracks under that umbrella. Then, though, in 1999, there was no such thing as a themed entertainment program. So I had a few books. The only book that existed on Walt Disney Imagineering to be a theme park designer. And so I kind of pulled from that book and made my own senior thesis and program, and became the first to graduate in themed entertainment in 2002 and 2003. I actually extended, but because of September 11th and no one was being hired, like the year before I graduated, they recruited everyone to go work on the Xbox. And the Xbox was brand new, because there was a company, the studio in Salt Lake, where a lot of video game studios started in Salt Lake City, and there was a lot of these
Mm.
startups, and Xbox had a huge faction, huge studio in Salt Lake. So they recruited literally the whole senior class of my program, illustration at BYU, and there's only 20, so they only accept 20 kids every 2 years into that department with portfolio reviews and interviews and all these things. And September 11th happened. There was no art project. No one was hiring artists at that point with everything that had taken place. On top of that, I had done a senior show that was a ride design that I came up with and became the first to show my work in theme park design and this ride concept. And a young lady that I went to school with who was always late to class, her work sucked. She would bring it in, pin it up on the board, like because you do critiques. So very first class, your assignment, you come, you hang your work up, and then your art teacher just shreds the hell out of you on purpose, right? And that happens every class for 3 hours. You just get shredded and shredded and shredded. And nowadays they're like, okay, that's not very good. But back then, they would rip the painting, the drawing off the wall, they'd pull it apart, throw it at you, and it was brutal. It was badass.
Yes.
I wish it was more brutal like that, and
100%.
because
So it makes you
people are
better,
just
right?
too soft these days, and I think being hard edged, or at least being treated like that as an artist, is actually good for you because it builds a thick skin, because people are not kind to illustrators in studios. I'm walking living proof of that. I can get to that in a little bit, but um you are just seen as as a risk. You're just there to churn out art for someone else's benefit. That's it. Period. Yes, you're getting money for it, but it's kind of a soul sucking experience a little bit. So art school is good for that because it teaches you to bone up. Really, you're going to be dealing with this. This is how it works in the real world. So
Mhm.
anyway, this young lady went to my show, and digital cameras were a brand new thing. She took pictures of all my art and submitted it to a Disney contest and plagiarized my show and won the contest. And I found out she won it the day I was walking to get my degree. I was in the computer lab, and this girl I went to school with named Kitty Wong came into the lab. She goes, "Josh, did you hear about so and so? They won this contest, and her work looked just like yours." And I'm like, "Wait."
It's almost like
So
it was your idea.
yeah, it's a whole story. And anyway, needless to say, the prospects of what I thought were my only opportunities, I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know what to do, like to make money, to have a life. So 1 week later, it was like a week later, I opened up the school newspaper, and there was an ad in the want ad section when there were still want ads. And it was, come work with kids in the woods. And I'm like, what? That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And it's wilderness survival therapist. But you had to audition, you had to try out to see if you're the right muster to actually do that job. It ended up being the coolest job and probably the greatest life experience of my life, was working as a wilderness therapist for troubled kids that were all forgotten, lost
Yeah.
boys and girls from their rich parents, a lot of them. So I answer the ad, go to this place in Lehi, Utah, and for a week they trained you wilderness survival techniques, and then they put you in the woods. And in the interviewing process, like, you have to make a bow out of juniper, and you've got to make a top rock, and you make a spindle, and you learn how to bust a coal, as they call it, and blow it into flame and start a fire, and then how to skin a snake, and what kind of cacti has water inside that you can cut open and drink from, and
That's
all these
crazy.
really cool survival skills that I grew up in scouts and was an Eagle Scout, my Eagle Scout, when I was 13. And it's funny now that scouts is kind of a swear word, but as a kid, um, in Idaho, it was awesome. And then when we moved, I was always moving and always the new kid. I got to where I ended up kind of hating scouts and couldn't wait to get out of it. So I hurried and did everything to get my Eagle when I was 13. So um, it took me back to being a scout, and there was a Navy SEAL, a former Navy SEAL, two Army Rangers, and then a bunch of educators that were in my training group to become a wilderness survival therapist. And then it was me, this artist, this weird guy artist. And what I didn't know, what I
So
didn't
I,
know is they all took bets to see how long I would last. They all thought I was going to drop out and I wasn't going to make it. And I outlast all them bitches. I did that job for 18 freaking years. And I owned them. Dude, I was really good at it. And I think the only reason why I was so good at it is because I was good at hard stuff. Like, I was good at just being kind of the outcast, being a weird person, living in my own world. And I was able to relate to the kids. A lot of these kids were forgotten, ignored from their parents, and then they used alcohol and drugs to compensate, to feel and at the time I was a completely sober person. I didn't drink. I'd never done drugs, and I'm in my mid 20s. I was 25 and working in the woods with kids, and I did that for 2 full years. Redesigned a ride concept because I was like, hell's bells, if that young lady can get a gig based on my folio, I'm going to try it again,
yeah.
and I'm going to resubmit my work. And so I was sitting around the campfire drawing pictures for a ride design and a ride concept. And I asked my younger brother, Luke, to join me, asked my friend Katie at the time, Katie, to write the script, then called my buddy Brian, who I had served a mission with in Ecuador, to storyboard because he was also a really good illustrator and a comic book aficionado. And he and I had kicked it off and hit it off in Ecuador, talking about movies and comic books and stuff like that. Called him up. He was in Anaheim. He was wearing a security guard and he had two twins and was, I don't know, making something like $9.50 an hour or something like that and trying to raise a family. And I said, I'm doing this thing. Do you want to join me in it? And he was like, yes, I'm out. So for 2 years, I compiled and cobbled together this new ride concept. And I ended up working as a survival therapist for first 2 years, left, taught high school art at high school for dropouts in Salt Lake City, Utah. Here's a crazy story. In addition to this story, I was living in a place called the Avenues up in Salt Lake, in a very, so if you guys ever want to do a podcast about ghosts and weird stuff,
Yes, yes.
that's a separate podcast. Because I can talk about that stuff for hours, because there was a time in my life in all of this, a thread line, where I swear I was being followed by crazy dark entities for years. And
What?
And so I lived in this, and I think there's a few reasons why, but I think one of them was I moved into a old 120-year-old townhouse unit up in the Avenues. And there's a show on TV on Netflix right now called My Haunted Story or something, My Ghost Story or something like that. And James Wan, the director, produces it. And there is a story about a family that moves into the Avenues in a house and is totally freaking possessed. That house was 3 doors down from the house I was living in.
Mm.
Yes, that was also possessed.
Mm.
And my brother Luke can tell you his version of the story too, but moved in, and that's a whole nother story. I won't get into it, but in at the same time I was living in this haunted house and I was teaching um at this high school for kids who hated my guts, dropouts that, they were forced by the state to take
Yeah.
regular high school classes to get credit so they can actually get their what is it, GRE or whatever, right? So I would take this train to get up to the Avenues, and then every day I'd take the train back to Murray, Utah, which is a lot farther from where the Avenues is, up on the side of the hill by the Capitol building. And there was a guy dressed like Jesus standing at the street corner. No, wait. Standing at the street corner every time I got off that train. You know who that guy was? It was the guy that kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. I used to see that guy every day panhandling by Temple Square in Salt Lake, totally dressed as Jesus. And he ended up kidnapping Elizabeth Smart at the end of the school year. And I walked past that guy. I gave that guy $1 once, like literally.
You
Which
funded
you
him.
used.
You an accomplice?
You funded.
Yeah, no. I didn't fund Elizabeth's kidnapping, but gave that guy $1 because I saw him every day. I would walk past him. Isn't that weird? So weird, right? So, and my friend Jess, who lives in New Jersey, she was with me. She could tell you she saw that guy too. We walked past him. And then when it hit the news that she got kidnapped, and a year later, I'd moved to LA at that point, and they found her walking on the side of the road. I'm like, I know that guy. I get that guy.
Jesus.
It's Jesus, drug Jesus.
Josh,
So, where am I? I'm all over it. Sorry, but yeah, and I
you're
was
good.
living in a haunted house, like literally living in a possessed old home. Anyway,
So I
we
want to rewind a little
submit.
bit, Josh. Okay, I
But
wanted to rewind just a little bit.
you want me to go backwards? Sure.
No, I have a question about something that we have gone through during this story. But you talk about like going from, being a kid in Idaho who's supposed to grow up and be a potato farmer, and then somehow you end up working at Disney. You start on
Yeah.
the operations side. What's that first position that you get, like more on the design side, on what you always dreamed of? And like, what are your responsibilities? Like, what does it feel like to finally get, that dream position that you've always thought about?
So this is where I'm going with this because
Okay,
let me
Yeah,
just tell
hang
you.
on, Alex.
Hang
I'm
on,
sorry.
we're almost
I
there.
just want to, I'm
That's
anxious.
chapter 2. So chapter 2 is I submit this ride design. I'm teaching high school. Disney calls me and says, you are a finalist in this contest. We're interviewing you guys to be Imagineer interns. And I literally fell on my knees in my office and was like, just started to cry because it had been such a thing. And knowing the pain of being ripped off by someone I went to school with. A few days later, they called me. And on the phone, that young lady that stole my work calls me on the phone and says, we're disqualifying you because I know you.
No.
That's true.
Wow.
That girl called me to disqualify me.
No way.
So here's what I did to
Wow.
answer your question, Alex. I finished out the school year, packed up my Buick. I had 2 emails out to a guy named Seth Cover at a place called Thinkwell, and then Kathy Steve and Tim Kirk, who were all the creative producers on a little park called Tokyo Disneyland. And they said, come down, let's do breakfast. And then Seth was like, come, let's meet. So I had no job offer. I had leads and packed up my car, sold everything else I had, which put like $300 in my pocket, $250 or so, and drove my Buick to LA. And Brian, my friend that I had served a mission with, was like, you can couch surf at my place. He got the internship at Disney, and me and my brother were disqualified. My brother, in proxy, because he was related to me, was just disqualified.
Dang.
So I took up Ryan's offer and went to LA, met with these folks, and they said, I think, well, Seth was like, come work with us. We have some projects we'd love to get you going. And that company was brand new. Now that company was just bought 2 years ago by a company called Tate. It's the whole thing. It's a big deal. That company doesn't even exist anymore. And they existed for 20 something years, but I was their first art department intern. And to answer your question, yeah, it felt good to finally be working in the industry. But I was an intern and I was 28. I don't know interns that are 28 today.
Yeah,
I don't know
Yeah.
one intern that's freaking 28 years old.
correct.
Every student I teach is 21, 22. They're not 28 and they're not making $9 an hour. There's this saying that I say, and it's really, it's laced with profanity, but like, suck a dick, right? Fucking suck a dick. Because for me, it was so late. My career took off so late, and because of all these setbacks, and then people just weren't freaking kind. I don't know how to describe it, but and part of it is now looking backwards, I wish I would have listened. I'm glad I became a theme park designer, but at the time, I wish I would have listened to what the universe was teaching me and what it was trying to tell me. This is not your industry. That is not your world. I know that now. At the time, though, I was so hell bent to do that thing that I was willing to live. So I would couch surf at Brian's house, go to Thinkwell, park my Buick in their back parking lot and sleep in the Buick and shower at the gym. I was only at Brian's house maybe on a Friday night, Saturday sometimes. The rest of the time, I was living in my car up at Thinkwell so I could do that internship at $9 and something cents an hour. I decided that I needed more education, so I applied for graduate school. There's more story in there, but I don't want to because I think we need to get to the good stuff real fast, and that
No,
is
that I think you're just like I have so many questions, but I don't want to interrupt because you're like this great storyteller. But you're so you talked about living in a Buick and then having to shower at the gym and then like uh, couch hop. But then I also read in your pre-survey just that you're designing all of these parks like afterwards, and so talking about like how you were trying to like reinvent yourself from your stolen project. What was the pressure like to have like, man, I have to succeed at what I'm doing? Because you talked about you designed one of the largest Disney castles in Shanghai, like you're doing all this stuff globally, but coming where you come from, what was that pressure like of like, oh, I have to hit this right?
here's the pressure. I decided to get my master's degree in set design because I needed my first creative director was a total asshat, and his name was Randy. Maybe he'll listen to this podcast.
I'll send it to him.
Uh, and he was just really mean. He was not kind at all. And in fact, at the end of my internship with him, he asked for if I knew of anybody who could step into my shoes, and I referred my younger brother, who is a brilliant illustrator. Like I said, I'm a designer who can draw. I am not an artist who designs. I'm the opposite. There's a big difference, and I communicate design by doodling it, by illustrating it. But I'm not going to sit there and do some giant freaking gel ass matte painting. That's just not my skill set.
Right.
My brother, that's his skill set. He's an incredible illustrator, but I think I'm a pretty good fucking designer. So, so having said that, I went to grad school, went to UC Irvine, and started studying, getting my master's degree in set design, which then kicked off. And I had never designed for theater, but that first year of grad school, I ended up going to Poland. I won Best of Show at the International Shakespeare Fest. I was
Whoa.
nominated for an Emmy Award, student Emmy. So I finally found an area of something that liked me. I'm like, wow, like I can do this and I can succeed at it. And man, it gave me so much wind in my sails. And because of that first year, I was recruited by a very well-known production designer who designed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids with Joe Johnston.
Great
The
movie.
Yeah, Babylon
Mm.
5, the show, the television show, several movies. And his name was John Yacovelli. And he came, he saw one of my shows, was really impressed with it, called me and he said, would you be interested in transferring from UCI to UC Davis to study with me? And I'll get you in television. I said, hell yeah. Because I had given up the idea of
Deal.
being a theme park guy. At that point, I was like, screw it. Like, so I went to UC Davis. John got me on a show called Lincoln Heights. I worked with Chadwick Boseman when he was a nobody. No one knew who he was.
No way.
Used to eat,
Wow.
used to eat lunch with that guy, craft
Whoa.
services. And I was the art department intern. And I drove my Saturn all over Hollywood, Culver City, all over North Hollywood, picking up things like hardware for kitchens, like for the set, and got to work on a television set. And it was not a big budget show. That was an afternoon drama series, but it was on TV for like 5 years. So anyway, I ended up getting my senior thesis was the tour, Broadway tour of Oklahoma, but we switched it out and did the sesquicentennial for UC Davis, and I got to design Oklahoma and a bunch of other,
Really?
yeah, and then on stage at the Mondavi Center for the Performing Arts.
No way. That's so cool.
Wow.
It was awesome. It was a great experience. It was crazy working with a Broadway director and with a big budget. And then from there, when I graduated, I moved to LA. I was hired. I have a whole nother podcast. I'm not going to get into it, but I was hired by a former student that I taught whose mom is an oil tycoon heiress in Dallas, who's very well known. And he hired me at a graduate school. And so I'm driving this little Saturn around at UC Davis, and the next thing I know, I'm on a Learjet going to Asheville to meet this kid's
Whoa.
mom to design apps when apps were brand new. The iPhone was 2 years old at this point, right? 2 or 3 years old. So started doing app startups. That story is a whole nother story because it was like Wolf of Wall Street with a 21-year-old kid who wasn't even 21, who was a billionaire's kid and moved into James Gandolfini's house in Bel Air, had the cartel after him. That's a whole nother story. I won't even get into it. That story is insane. That story's crazy. And I have a ton of witnesses that can totally testify. A lot of people that I worked with at ThinkWell, because we ended up partnering with ThinkWell on an app design. I was working with this kid, but it was then that some people reached out to me. Had been designing movie premieres, designed the premiere for Contagion with Soderbergh's people. I designed the Battlefield 3, this dates me, Battlefield 3 opening premiere of the video game launch with Jay-Z rapping on top of a Humvee, which was my idea. And I pitched that to these execs.
What?
And they were like, that's a great idea. We'll do that. And then John, my professor who I studied with, called me and said, hey, I've got a show that you would be great for. And I'm going to refer you, go meet this guy up in Santa Clarita near Six Flags at the Disney Family Ranch. The Disney Family Ranch is where they shot Adventures of Sid and Marty for the Mickey Mouse Club. It's where they shot scenes from Little House on the Prairie. It's this giant ranch owned by the Disney family and the Disney company now. And they were making a show called Wipeout. And so they interviewed me and hired me to be a production illustrator. And then I became a production designer, one of like 5 production designers for that show, and designed the set and scenery for Wipeout and all the graphics for Wipeout.
Wow.
On air graphics. It was crazy amounts of money. It was amazing amounts of money. And I would do something, they would send a check right away, and the money was amazing. Plus, I was designing premieres and stuff like that for event companies and for people like Soderbergh and whatnot. So I was crushing it. And here's your answer, Alex.
We're
I have
here.
this friend. I have a friend named Nina Ray Vaughn. She's a famous, well-known retired Imagineer. And she was like, Josh, I got this friend named Bruce. You meet with this guy named Bruce. And I'm like, okay, who's that? And she's like, well, he works at Walt Disney Imagineering. And Walt Disney Imagineering at the time was gearing up to build Shanghai Disneyland. I'm going to keep my Imagineering time frame, which ended up being a little under 5 years, short, for a very good purpose. But I ended up meeting this guy, and I got a job offer. I met this woman named Doris Hardoon, who's now a Disney legend, and she brought me in, and I worked and reported directly to Doris, and she put me on the Enchanted Storybook Castle as the production designer for that project. Plus Gardens of Imagination, and then I ended up working on the Mickey Avenue team too. So I had the scope of work. I was like, give it to me, just give it to me. I'll do it. And I didn't know it, but at the time, all those projects and that project, Doris would have me design a weather vane for like something. And I'd like doodle some design. She'd pick one. She goes, we're doing that. She would send it for pure approval, right, to the president of the park project, Bob Wise, who would sign it. And then it was going into fabrication. No one at WDI, Walt Disney Imagineering, works like that. You usually go through several rounds of iterations. There's 20 people that have all got input. Then it's got to go to this, then it's got to go to that, and then it finally gets approved. And if it does finally get approved, your design as a show designer, then the design has been value engineered to the hilt, and it's not even a shadow of what it was that you drew. I was drawing designs that were getting fabricated straight out the gate. I did not know that. I thought that was normal. That wasn't normal. And then she put me on, she said, this is your baby. This is your project. You're going to design the walkthrough inside this castle. I need you to conceptualize this whole thing, storyboard it, help me write the script. And that's how Doris talks. Like, you ever meet Doris, you work with Doris, not just follow Doris around because you're enamored by Doris. But if you work one-on-one with Doris, Doris is like a drill sergeant. She's like, this is what we're doing. We're doing that. And I'm like, well, okay, whatever you say, boss.
You
And
got
I'm
it,
just
Doris.
right. Whatever you say, Doris. A little like Devil Wears Prada, like working with Meryl Streep,
Meryl
like
Streep.
like gorgeous, badass woman who will freaking take no prisoners, and knock you around, slap you upside the head a few times.
No, Doris.
Yeah, but my experience with Doris was like that. It was boom, boom, boom. Very direct, and it was cool at the same time. It was frightening, and then I couldn't say no to that project and that offer because it was what I had always wanted. So now I'm going to be very honest and truthful about that and just say I wish I had said no. I
Wow.
wish I went.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, yeah. It was a hard project. I ended up going to China, living in China, which was difficult, very difficult, and by myself. And I started doing speed and a bunch of other stuff to make my deadlines. I wasn't sleeping. I was working around the clock, overdosed in my apartment twice. So all the years of trying to do this thing, trying to do this gig and working with addicts, I became an addict on my dream project. The pressure was so enormous, so immense. This is your answer. I ended up combusting and just completely folding at the end. It was so hard. And hard mostly because people politics. You spend all this time dedicating your art and your craft. And like I say, as being an artist, someone who draws, you pour your soul in your drawings. You have to in order to create it and in order to deliver. Problem is people take advantage of it. And so, yeah, there's so much to say about that. But
Well, I
yeah,
think it all kind of culminates with like what got you to the point in the first place is that you were able to turn away from kind of the status quo and what everybody wanted you to do, and then it led you to this road to where you finally got the opportunity to do what you've worked your entire life for. And then it's like you almost jumped out on a limb and it took you too far and you kind of realized how people are. So I think like a good question to ask is if you take a step back and you look at that, because it's like, man, when I listen back, I'm going to have about 28 follow up questions because there's got to be some stories that we got to expand on a little bit and stuff. But I think the biggest one for you is like, once again, you go from making that decision to kind of turn the other way and go left when everybody else is going right. But then it took you all the way to the edge of becoming an addict and some things that like you chased your passion almost to a fault. So if you were sitting, with your younger intern self when you're 18 to 20, like
right.
what's the one thing you'd remind them of like, Josh, you got to do it this way to make sure when you get to the end, it's exactly what you want it to be and you're in control and then it doesn't get out of your control. So what's one piece of advice that you would give to maybe be able to do it a little bit differently if you could go back?
There were several moments in that path where I would get these little whispers of insight. Call it whatever you want. Call it the Force, call it Obi-Wan Kenobi or Master Yoda, speaking to your heart and your soul. But I would get this insight and it'd be like, don't do it. Josh, turn around. And in a very esoteric way, I don't know how to say it, but I believe on a higher energy level, we've all done this before. We've all lived this. We've done it. We've seen this. I can't explain it, but I actually think it was me warning myself then. Don't do this thing. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And I know for a fact that if I could sit, to answer your question, Justin, if I could sit and look at myself, younger version of myself, and say, don't do it. That younger version would be like, screw you. I'm going to freaking do it.
Yeah.
I don't like people telling me no. I don't like, look, like we're masters of our own universes. Like no one can tell anybody what not to do in their life path. They've got to do what their heart and the beating heart of their soul is commanding them to do. Like, what's that quote? The master of my fate, captain of my soul, right? Like, that's that was and is who I am. Like, I had to do it. So I can say right now, like, I wish I would have never done it, but I had to do it. And it was painful and it was freaking hard. And the rest of that story is I ended up quitting my dream job in 2015 and coming home and putting myself as the oldest student in the woods in wilderness survival therapy
Whoa.
as a
Wow.
39-year-old man. And I'm with all these young kids and I submitted myself. Talk about suck a dick, right? Suck a dick. That was no, but I mean that
Yeah.
like talk about humble, having a
Yeah.
giant humble pie shoved in your face, like
Yeah.
sitting in the woods. So here we go. Fast forward. It's like 2000, was it? It was it was late 2015 and I'd come home and I thought I could manage myself. Everyone always does this with alcohol, whatever your weapon is of choice, and
Mhm.
to numb the pain because it was just pain, echoes. Like you can't turn your brain off, and you're just like, it sucks. I also know now I am hyper ADHD, incredibly like I'm textbook and undiagnosed and unmedicated. And all my life was like that. My parents were poor. We didn't go to the doctor and get medication. Especially growing up super religious, religion was the medication. It was the wrong medication for me. It made it worse, right? So for me, 2018, I finally went to the doctor and I need help. There's something wrong with me. And he's like, you know what? Sounds like you've got a massive case of ADHD. And here's why. And he explained it, this really young doctor who was ADHD. And I'm all, yeah, that
Makes you
sounds
wanna know
about
one.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I did a side test. They tested a bunch of other stuff, and he goes, "Dude, I think you need some meds." So they put me on a very low dose of Wellbutrin to help manage ADHD, and I'm on it today. And it's been the greatest lifesaver, game changer. Like it changed my life because then I can sit and I can draw for hours. I can focus. I can manage who I am. I was doing that completely raw, like trying to manage myself. And so the humble pie part was sitting in the woods around a campfire with nothing. I had lost everything. All the money I'd made in Shanghai was gone. I was homeless again. Everyone thought I was a loser. This whole story arc of working super, super hard only to fail miserably and be like a bug splat on a windshield. Yeah. It was the worst and greatest moment of my life because I had to really change and work really hard at the change. So to this day, like I'm sober, but I didn't grow up an addict. You don't just decide to be an addict. Like I didn't.
Mm.
Like it happened because of pressure and stress and performance and all this pressure you put on yourself. But so now, like, people call me all the time, like, how do I do it? How can you help me? Can you give me advice? So really, I would say like this whole crazy story and this story art for me, in the end, it's just about helping people. It's not about all the art. It's not all this crap behind me, these tchotchkes from different projects and places I've lived around the world. It's about helping people who need help.
Mm.
And I find it in teaching. I am an adjunct professor. I do work at Space Center Houston with Karina Alex and love her. She's amazing. And some incredible people over there. Not every day is great. No, not every day is great for anybody. But I will tell you, I'm so grateful because I am clean. I'm sober.
Mm.
I found a partner. My life is quiet and it's peaceful and it's about education. It's about science, STEM research now. It's all these other things that I wish had found me a long time ago, but I wasn't ready for it, I guess. So there are a lot of other theme park projects I could tell you about because since going into rehab and everything, I mean, that was almost a decade ago. So now, it was a decade ago, actually. So now, since then, I've built handmade Dungeons and Dragons parks back in Utah. I've
Cool.
lived in Hong Kong. Stayed for a while in Saudi, taught at Savannah College of Art and Design, lived in St. Louis working for a big architectural firm on a Dollywood project that was incredible that opens this year. I've done some cool stuff, but the coolest thing is that now my life is just peaceful.
That's so cool. And I really respect like that insight of, I wish I would have learned these lessons sooner, but I wasn't ready for them. And I hope you know that I think you have like so much, like you're such a fun guy, but there's like so much wisdom that you just talking to us, I took in from like at least the last, we've been on for an hour, of just like we've had the high moments, we've had the low moments, we've had the couch hopping, the homeless, the addiction, and now you're like, hey, I just like this whole world is meant to be creative and loved and to love others and to help others and find happiness and joy. And I think you're a really good representation of that. And I want to be respectful of your time because we try to keep it around an hour. So I have
Sure.
one more signature question for you that we ask at the end of every episode. And I think this one could be interesting because you talked about your Mormon upbringing and then you left the Mormon church and where you are now. So I'm curious to your insight of like in your life right now, who are you following, reading, or listening to that's encouraging your walk with God or your personal growth right now?
Well, so I still believe in God. I will say that, but I will tell you that I have discovered, I hate calling it Buddhism. It's not really Buddhism. I have discovered the power of positive energy.
Yes.
It's the power of the law of attraction, of attracting positivity. And I meditate, I pray. Faith for me is I couldn't have found sobriety without believing in higher power. And I will tell you this too. I still believe you got to believe in something bigger than yourself. If you only believe in yourself and struggle with your own insecurities, then you're failing. That's not how it's supposed to be. There is a reason why you get up in the morning, and that reason's got to motivate you, and it's got to be more than you. It can't just be about you. It can't. It won't work. It won't last. And if it is, you're sticking band-aids and duct tape to make it work. So I've always believed in believing something bigger than yourself. I mean, I used the 12 steps. I had to believe in something else, and it couldn't be me. I was a part of that equation, right? But it had to be something else. And so, yeah, I don't know. I work really, really super hard to be positive and to be a positive example. I haven't been very positive recently, and there's a bunch of stuff I'm dealing with at work that's just political nonsense. And I will tell you that I love my job and I love the people I work with. That doesn't make it perfect ever, right? No job is. But I work really hard to be positive and to go through my day to help find people that need uplifting. Like that's my goal. When I get to work, that's what I'm looking to do. It's not everything else. It's to be an influence for good. And I think, that's faith. I think that's faith.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a perfect answer to that question. But Josh, dude, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your real story, and not just the highlight reel. Like anybody can come on and just talk about like the highlights of moment of their lives, but for you to like be transparent with three guys you've never met before, and just like show that you can be positive through the experiences you've had. You had this whole life creating joy for others while you were battling your own little things, but now you can share that positivity with your new way of thinking. So I appreciate you coming on. We can send people your way. Go follow Josh at steadmanstyles.com or on Instagram at steadmanstyles. And if you haven't already, to hear more conversations, more guests like Josh, go ahead and follow, like, and subscribe to the podcast below. Genuinely, your listening gets us to have these really cool conversations like we had with Josh, and just gets to open our doors to meet a lot of cool people. Josh, I want you to come back and tell about your haunting and your ghost stories and all of the stuff that you had to.
We got to get lost in the woods with part two,
You guys,
for sure.
my gosh. Let me just tell you something real fast, just to tease.
Come on.
Love it.
Ease it.
I have a story spent 7 days with a group of young ladies hiking them through and had a Navajo witch / S-dub. You're not supposed to say their names. Starts with skin, ends with
Skinwalker, Skinwalker,
Skinwalker.
Skinwalker, Skinwalker.
And that's it. I
Dang
had
it,
one
Colin.
follow us around for a week. And
No.
in the deserts of southern Utah, it's a wild story. Actually, just bringing that up, I've got goosebumps, and it's so crazy. Like I said, I have seen some crazy stuff just working with kids, but I will tell you why I think most of that happened is because people were fighting demons, literally fighting their own demons. They were fighting demonic, creepy attachment stuff that all goes with addiction. And so it pops up, it comes out, and especially with young people, right? 16-year-olds dealing with really dark stuff, abuse, and a lot of other things. And so those things happen, especially you're in the Monument Valley, you're on the Grand Staircase in southern Utah, the North Rim of the Grand Canyon's 10 miles from you, and there's nobody anywhere. We'll save that podcast.
Just people knocking on your door, telling you to come find the way of the Lord.
Thanks, guys.
We will plan a part 2. Yes, sir. Appreciate it, man.
Josh. Thank
Love
you.
it. Have a good
Yeah,
night,
thanks,
guys.
Josh.
Hey,
Yeah,
nice to
you
meet
too,
you, bud.
man. Thanks a lot, man.
Bye.